Mm. You can't.
Good evening. Welcome to Slate School and our conversation with Bill Crain about the power of childhood. We're so looking forward to our conversation this evening. Slate School is committed to excellence in education, and we are delighted to present the Education Idea Lab, which is a unique and virtual series that is free and open to the public. This thought-leading event convenes leaders and change makers and participants from all sectors of education and innovation. So thank you for joining us. We're thrilled to have all of you with us here tonight. My name is Julie Mountcastle, and I'm head of school at Slate School. So I'll just briefly introduce you to Slate School, and then we'll get busy with our remarkable guest. Slate School is an independent 501c3 nonprofit K-12 school where education is focused on cultivating creativity, fostering ingenuity, and inspiring a deep passion for lifelong learning. So at Slate School, we have formed a community that is constantly striving to improve practice and to create meaningful educational experiences for learners of all ages and to change the landscape of education. Slate School convenes experts for important, authentic conversations about education, and these online dialogues, just like tonight's, are always free and open to the public. So we're so delighted to have all of you with us tonight. And now our guest, Bill Crain. Bill Crain is a professor of psychology at the City College of New York. He is the author of Forever Young: How 6 Great Individuals Have Drawn Upon the Powers of Childhood and How We Can Follow Their Lead, as well as the textbook Theories of Development, Concept and Applications, and the books Reclaiming Childhood, Letting Children Be Children in Our Achievement-Oriented Society, and The Emotional Lives of Animals and Children, Insights from a Farm Sanctuary. He served 9 years on the TNEC New Jersey Board of Education, and for that, you should receive a medal, and is the co-founder of Safe Haven Farm Sanctuary in New York, which gives a lifelong home to farm animals that have been rescued from slaughter. So you can see, Bill is a very varied and interesting human, and we are about to have a really wonderful conversation tonight. Throughout this conversation, though, we would invite you, the audience, to submit questions and comments here on Facebook, and we will address as many of those as possible. So join me in welcoming Bill Crain. Hi, Bill. How are you?
Good, thank you. And you?
I'm great. I'm great, and I'm so excited about talking about your book. I know we were talking a little bit before we started about. I kind of laughingly said, you know, you're giving us evidence here for why it's important to do what I think most people, if they really think about it and get kind of in touch with what's right for them inside, would agree is right for kids and right for humans, and that's kind of staying in touch with childhood, some of the wonderful talents of children. and your book is just, I should remove my sticky note from the cover. It's just a beautiful piece of scholarly and lovingly written evidence for why we should do that. And so I guess my first question is, why this book now?
Well, for a long time, I've been on a crusade trying to get people to appreciate childhood. And this book, I just felt that everybody's interested in test scores and getting children prepared for the future economy, and they're ignoring children right now and their special qualities and their strengths. And in some ways they have strengths that are superior to those of adults. And if we could just appreciate them, they would feel that and have opportunity to develop their strengths more and have a fulfilling childhood. And the ideas have been brewing for quite a while that great people go back to their childhoods and draw on these strengths of childhood, like the sense of wonders and playfulness. Some of the great people. And so for about the last 6 or 7 years, I've been writing this book, and it's taken a while to learn about each of these people and to pull it all together. And but it's the idea. I thought if people realize that the most creative people appreciate the strengths of childhood and are calling upon them for their own creativity, and these are really the great people, the real, Jane Goodall and Albert Einstein, and the ones that we all admire. If they realize that maybe they think maybe we should have another look at kids and maybe our own childhoods and try and pull them. So that's how it evolved, and I stayed with the book a long time. And this one was not a very easy book to write, but it was.
It's probably challenging to write a book you feel so strongly about.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. Yeah, I wanted to make it readable and
Well,
have
it
good.
certainly is. It's really a lovely book. I know for those of you who haven't read it yet, it talks about six lives, and I guess I've been wondering how you chose the 6.
I have. I knew that I had an idea that these people had drawn on childhood, and my own strongest interest is children's sensitivity to nature. So that probably biased, I'm sure it biased who I chose, Thoreau and Jane Goodall and Rachel Carson, a little bit, some of the others too. So those were people I've always admired, and they try to keep alive the child's sensitivity to nature and love of animals and love of nature. Really, it's a soft word, but that's what they try to keep alive, is this feeling for nature. And then I wanted to give it some breadth. So I wanted to bring play in.
Mm-hmm.
And so I selected Charlotte Bronte as one who used play, who just got so involved with her siblings in make-believe play. She had a terrible, hard life. She lost her mother when she was 5. She lost her 2 older sisters when she was turning 9 years old, and just had but the siblings played together, and they really played out these dramas. So it was an example of how powerful play can be. And then she turned into great works, great novels. And she also turned her imagination into something that came out of play. It came out of this make-believe play. Her Jane Eyre and her sister Emily Bronte's work. It came out of these places. And these are some of the great novels and in literature. So I chose her to illustrate that. And then I wanted Einstein, because he's probably the most esteemed of all thinkers. I didn't know a lot of, I mentioned it took a while to write it. I didn't know a lot of physics. I had to read some physics to know what he was doing. And I was not too good at physics in college. And so
This is your second chance.
I struggled to do that. And so that was part of the challenge. And Bronte, I didn't know much about, and I had to try to read about her, and a remarkable woman. Rachel Carson is a remarkable one. And Thoreau is the one I've always felt the closest to. So Henry David Thoreau, that came naturally, the choice of Thoreau. that one came naturally. I had, so I tried just kind of following partly who I liked, partly to give it a little more breadth and learn about some people I didn't know. If I could write another one, I would probably include more people in the arts. And any book you think afterwards, what more you could have done.
I know. Honestly, I was thinking like, who was number 7? Who just missed the cut?
Yeah. Well, it's an interesting question. Picasso or Paul Klee, maybe. Might have just missed the cut. Maybe Beethoven. These are ones I have to explore.
Oh, so you went ahead and you did the research on more than the 6, and then decided which ones.
Yeah, the Darwin. But I had enough on nature.
Yeah, right.
Darwin would have. In fact, I wrote a chapter for another book that I haven't published, and I have a chapter on Darwin, but I didn't put it in here. So in the future, some other book I can bring in Darwin. The people, the naturalists, are the most appealing, and their childhood. It always grew out of their childhood love of nature in every case. And another one was Carl von Frisch, who studied bees. Bees are interesting now to me. I learned about bees. I've been interested in bees. They're remarkably intelligent in their communication. In fact, I predict that people are going to start discovering, like as with crows, they're going to discover amazing things about bees. And von Frisch did. And the planet needs the bees. The crisis of the collapse of the bee colonies. I mean, a huge amount of wildflowers and and agriculture needs the pollination of the bees, and so that it's ecologically it's a critical thing. So I've been attracted to von Frisch, and those are some of the people I'm thinking about. It's a good question. I could go on thinking.
So great.
It's a fun question.
You know what's interesting about it is, we're at Slate School where we have all these projects that we do, and we do 4 or 5 every year, and each child does whatever they're interested in. And so in my class, there are 21 different projects 4 or 5 times a year. And so I get involved in my project, but kind of like you, my project leads me to something else, which leads me to something else. And the kids are the same way. So I think that if they are listening tonight, they're appreciating the fact that, one project leads to many more.
Yeah, it does. And these people, they had a passion for what they were observing. So that comes through, and it appealed to me about von Frisch. Von Frisch, he won the Nobel Prize. And he said, he said, to be honest with you, the Nobel Prize is fine, but I would rather, it's not nearly the pleasure I get of sitting outside in the summer and watching the bees.
Wow. Great. That's great. That's great.
The pure pleasure for what he's.
Yeah, well, that's a beautiful.
So if people could follow their. We should, I'm sure your teachers agree, if you can just let children follow their strongest interests, you can see their learning. Sure.
And I think, really for too long, we've sort of said, oh, that's all fine, but you're going to have to figure out something that's, you're going to make a living at. And
yeah.
You're going to put all those things aside because, you can't just look at the bees forever.
Right.
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 And gee, I think this book and so much other evidence tells us that the people who've lived the greatest, most fulfilling lives have never put the bees aside. They've said, this is what I love. This is what I'm passionate about. I'm gonna stay in this, and I'm gonna jump into it. And I'm sure that a livelihood will follow. And I actually don't think that's a luxury. I think that's what we should demand of ourselves. But
That's a beautiful, beautiful statement.
thank you.
Yeah.
I just I do.
Obviously, it's something you care about.
Yeah, I do get to see children every day, pursuing the things that they're passionate about and doing it in ways that I'm sure, real genius creativity is coming from them. And, just like you've talked about in other conversations, but especially in this book, how we really need to listen to kids because they have special perspective on things.
Yeah, people, I mean, Einstein, when Einstein died, he'd given permission to do an autopsy on his, because people want to know what was the source of his intelligence? How could he be so bright, much brighter than anybody else? Well, he worked to exhaustion on, if one thing, it wasn't just intelligence as much as that was, but just the capacity for exhausting work. But he said, my answer is, his own answer when asked that question is, I maintain the passion, the curiosity of a child. I'm still a child, right? And he had this sense of wonder and the beauty of the universe, which we can't quite understand. And he was like a pilgrim trying to reach for something sacred and precious in the universe. And,
his prairie was the sky.
And he retained the wonder of that you can see in children. It's a powerful statement. And by the way, Einstein, in terms of this age of testing, Einstein, when he passed his exams for the Polytechnic Institute, this is in the chapter there, he was so upset by the whole process of taking the exams that he said he couldn't think about anything in physics for an entire year. It cost him the exams cost him a year of his life.
And then I think you quoted it in the book, as you say something about his brain was being filled up with all sorts of.
Cramming things into his brain was such a noxious experience. That he, but that's what kids are in mainstream schools. That's what they're asked to do. It's not very nice.
It's not. And yet I know that people in mainstream schools aren't doing it to punish children.
No.
No, that they really think that they're on the right track. But I think that's why a book like this is so important, because that is not
what your school is doing in the labs and so on to try to get the message out.
It's
so
not.
I
since you brought up Einstein, I love this idea that he talked about the Olympia Academy. I wonder if you could describe that and talk about that a little bit, because I think we all need to find our own version.
Well, Einstein, he couldn't get a job. He was a kind of rebellious student who didn't like to. I don't know. He wasn't always very compliant. He was sort of one of the rebellious, troublemaking students, and he couldn't get a job after graduation. He tried, and so he had spent some time tutoring and part-time teaching. He couldn't get a university job, and one of the ads he put out for tutoring in a local newspaper drew a graduate student named Solovine, his last name, Maurice, I think, Solovine. And he came in for an interview to see about he wanted to maybe have some tutoring in physics for his own education. And Einstein and he got in this conversation. The conversation lasted a long time. They were just caught up in their ideas in the conversation, and then he spread word out about the conversation. He came back, and Einstein served him tea, and other people, friends of Sullivan and others a few others started to come, and they had these discussions, probably weekly discussion groups where they just discussed ideas. And they since they were trying to solve the problems of the world in these discussions and had a kind of Olympian flavor to it, they jokingly called themselves the Olympia Academy. And near his, this is when he was developing his the special theory of relativity. Because he came out of these discussions, and one of the people who came, one of the young guys who came, was a sounding board for him. I don't think he could have done it without the support he had. He was a very loner kind of guy, and but he had these people in his friends working, discussing ideas and listening to him and challenging him and helping him formulate his theory of relativity. And so he, right before he died, he decided to send a letter to Sullivan and to the Olympia Academy, and he said something like, your childlike pursuit of truth still casts light on our lonely travels in the world. Something he tried to write something. He wrote something kind of poetic about, but it had the word childlike fascination with the world that's still shining its light. He saw children as full of wonder, and he himself was full of wonder. And he said that's what's driving the children. Said we're like children, born into the great mystery, and we're trying to solve. We look on it like a child does the great mystery before us. And he felt he had the luxury of doing that, although it was a struggle.
Yeah.
He was working finally as a patent clerk for a while, and finally got a teaching university job 4 or 5 years after the first theory of relativity. He got a Nobel Prize, but it wasn't for theory of relativity. It was way later.
Yeah.
Anyway, that was the Olympia Academy. But I think to me, it kind of shows that we need some support. He needed support of some people to talk to and friends. He also went to a progressive school for a year when he was about ready to look like he was headed nowhere.
Right.
They got a break by going to a Swiss school in the tradition of Pestalozzi, where the emphasis was on taking it easy and enjoying learning. So it was an easy, in there he first started thinking about some of the questions that went into relativity. He had a couple breaks, although he was kicked out of school, out of a high school. And he, as I say, couldn't find a job, was working as a patent clerk, and he had his struggles, but he always appreciated the child.
You know, it's interesting. You know, you mentioned the difficulties, and earlier on you were talking about Bronte and just the incredible heartache that I think she suffered in her life. And I don't know if you're making this point or if I'm just willing to hear it because I think it too. But maybe it's that, creativity and imagination can actually save us in a lot of situations. And I think some people who have a lot of heartbreak and a lot of heartache they're more willing to look for that and say this is something that's really necessary. But it's really necessary for everybody, I think. You mentioned their imaginary play, the Bronte kids. And actually, I've seen how powerful that is just as an idea that can be used in schools. When we shared this idea of a shared imaginary land with our students, they were in a group that was in second grade.
Uh-huh.
They ended up creating their own. And they did it sort of as a whole group, sitting around the table. And they ended up calling it Yes and, kind of like the old improvisational line, if whatever somebody offers, you say yes and that was their theory for how they were gonna create it together. And I'll tell you what was amazing about it, Bill, is how deeply invested they became, and then the level of rigor in contemplating it. I mean, there was conversation about a constitution. So we had law students from the local university come and talk to them about, constitutions and what they're made for. And they would say, well, yes and is of a limited size. And everybody's going to want to go there. Nobody ages in yes and, everything is wonderful in yes and, right? Nobody's sick there. And so what are we going to do? Because everybody's going to want to come, but yes and is only so big. So they were talking about immigration and whether or not, talking about the borders of yes and. It just became really, it became a really great, just as a teacher, a really great teaching tool. And I really wasn't doing anything. It was them, it was all them. So in those moments where as educators, we might be wondering like, oh, gee, do we have time to do this? Is this, actually more than yes, you have time to do this. You must do things like this because the children will take you to places that you have never dreamed they could imagine.
The urge to play and to develop imagination is so powerful. If you cut it off, it's like cutting off a limb or something. It's just hurting the development. It becomes the urge to play. I mentioned it. My wife, who's a pediatrician, once came and said something like, is the urge to play innate? Because kids will play no matter how, pretty much, unless they're practically dying in the emergency room, they'll play. And we can't use it as it fools a lot of the doctors because they look like they're okay, because how could they be, but because they're playing, how could they be sick? But they'll play with bad asthma, they'll play with a lot of conditions. And she got me thinking that she was probably onto something, that maybe the urges probably comes from within, maybe innate. And you gotta respect it. The imagination part, that's what it leads, it fuels the imagination. That definitely. And you raised the point. With Bronte, and she said, imagination saved me when I was falling. She was grieving over the losses of her. Well, when she was a child, they played like crazy in a house where she'd lost her sisters in a terrible school, and where they were just alone together, nobody outside, no adults, very, very little support from adults. The kids played together and they kept going. And then later in life, it was like writing her novels, was like continuing the play, and it kept her going. She was, fighting a very serious depression, and she just kept working. In her imagination, she said, saved her when I was falling in my imagination. So creative work will keep us going during hard times.
I didn't know much about Howard Thurman. But there was a lovely quote from him, I think, where he says that hate dries up creativity. And I thought that was an interesting quote and a great connection between all of those people, because I think Einstein and Bronte, they could have, become, sad, resentful people. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, Thurman was hate is appealing to African Americans because of the oppression. And he knew that and when you start to hate and you say, we're gonna get revenge and we're gonna destroy this system that's been oppressing us, he said, I understand we get a sense of power. Herb Thurman was an African-American minister who was very influential in the civil rights movement behind the scenes.
Mhm.
And he was trying to say, but you can't go that route. You feel strong when you're angry, but we can't go that route, he thought, because that's what he thought. One of the things it does is it destroys our creativity.
Yeah.
We get focused so much on the hate, and we can't be full people. And the point is to be full people and to try to find some way of, you can see the influences between him and Martin Luther King is to love everyone despite who they are, what they're doing.
Right.
There's something human in them that it's universal, that we can still love, even though we don't love what they're doing, we don't love their roles, but there's some common humanity. And that came out of his feeling of oneness with all life, which Thurman developed as a child. Once again, these ideas had their germ in childhood experiences.
I'm curious now. I just opened the book just to check this because I know you have this affinity and relationship really with Thoreau, but you dedicated the book to Jane Goodall.
How
come?
She's still alive.
Okay.
And I thought about that a lot. I wanted to, it was very hard to just pick who to dedicate. Obviously, I was thinking of my wife, I was thinking of her children, I was thinking of Thoreau. You're right, you guessed right. But I thought, well, I doubt he could appreciate it now. He may, unless there's things going on that I'm not aware of. And Goodall is still going at it.
You tell a story in the book about a moment of, I don't want to say otherworldly, but just incredible communication between her and the chimp, David Graybeard.
Yes.
Do you want to recount that? Because I think that's I think there's something in that story that is really, I think it's universal, and I think it speaks beyond that story.
Right. I'm interested in your thoughts on it. This also the story. I think it's the one that she thought was touched her so deeply. I think she thought it was a greatest moment of her life or something like that. It really moved her. Was she was sitting by David Graybeard, the chimp who had accepted her initially, the first one to accept her. She had a lot of trouble getting the chimps to accept her presence, and David Graybeard was the first one to come around, and it continued to be the one who was. And once people saw David Graybeard, the other chimps saw David Graybeard around her, they felt, well, it must be okay to be near her, else, this guy Graybeard wouldn't be, our friend wouldn't, she must be okay. The story was that she offered him a palm nut, and her, she put it into his hand, and he didn't want it, and dropped the nut, and then reached over and grabbed her hand to reassure her, to say, I understood you, it's not the nut, I understood that you had a good heart here, wanting me to have a nut. And that communication, that reassurance, he reassured her, and that we're speaking a language that is way more ancient and deeper than words. And we're, like you say, it showed that there is a unity between us, and in the rest of the animal kingdom and the rest of the world, that we're not so different from everything else around us. There's a unity to life. She felt that too, that there was some, and she put it in spiritual terms, but it was, this reaffirmed her sense of, and she kept writing about that, to the unity of life and the unity. She kept writing about chimps. The DNA evidence indicates that they're only 1% different from us. And she kept trying to bring in facts to support her contention. And when she talks and gives lectures, she keeps bringing that point up. They're only 1% different. And she tells that story of the palm nut story.
Yeah. It's funny because it's connection on so many levels. So
connection is a word.
Yeah.
What were you had a thought more?
Well, yeah. Well, when I read it, I just thought, this is just one more moment where we think we know something, and nature knows so much more.
Uh-huh.
Nature knows so much more, and you could apply it to anything. You could apply it to, we think we know how the water is supposed to flow, better than the river, but then, there's a, few weeks of rainstorms and nature's telling us that, we really don't know better. Nature knows, or,
Yeah.
and I think, and I see, like, because it's about connection and communication, I see it, between educator and learner, so often you think you've got something that you want to share with, your student or your learner. And in the end, it's really you that are the learner.
It's very good. I was thinking about that today, that the Einstein and Thoreau, they said one of the big handicaps getting in the way of understanding the world is the idea that we need to know things. We need to be in the know. We have to know the answers. And it gets in the way of just looking at things with an open mind and taking a fresh look and like you say, realizing we don't know. Einstein said one of the things he liked about children is they're not embarrassed by the gaps in their knowledge. Most everybody I wrote about you have to realize that there's a mystery out there. We don't know everything. And so many people I know, colleagues and others, they always want to know more than the next person. They always try and impress everybody by knowing more. They know more about this and that and everything. And in my academic community, always competing by showing they know more about some subject than somebody else does. But the real great scholars are kind of naive. They are purposely kind of naive. They want to keep their minds open and learn things. Yep. That's a sort of their curiosity overrides their need to know. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think it totally does. I think they're they're also willing to wonder about it.
Yeah.
Willing to enjoy the wonder of it, like live in the awe of it. Like, isn't that amazing? And then sometime later say, I what if it is this or that?
Mm-hmm.
It's I think a lot of, well, what I hear in the classroom from kids is a lot of that. It's a lot of that. What if? We don't provide a lot of answers for kids when they have questions and wonderings, and just the lack of the answer leads them to imagine what the answer could be. And we always say, this is our opportunity, because they might have a better answer
mm-hmm.
than what we might find on Google. So
right. I was talking to something about that, and some students were listening in, and some graduate school in education graduate school students and me. I was talking to, we had some kind of workshop with Eleanor Duckworth, who said the right answers are overestimated. And so we're talking about that a little bit, and the students took this to be liberating because they had always thought they had to be perfect. There's somehow this drive to be perfect and have all the answers and not be stupid.
Well, it is, I think it's, I don't know. I think it's epidemic, in teaching where, educators are told that, you have to get up and all the stuff and you have to tell your students what's important. And, you need to know everything. And it just, it's actually a crippling mistake. Because I think the most important things you can teach your students is, how little and how important it is to make mistakes and kind of flounder around.
Right.
Every
And
now
that's not always easy, but it's also must be very fun to watch children with an open mind and be willing to learn about them. It's quite, you discover new things, and it must be very fun to
It is a great job.
have an open, if you have the freedom to have an open mind with kids and be able to observe them and learn from them and make discoveries about them.
I think though that we can never be as good at it as they are, and that's also a nice humbling kind of thing. One of the things you talked about in the book, I think it was Goodall that had so she has this incredible moment in the jungle with the chimps, and then all of a sudden the next thing, she's having a lot of heartache, and she's in Paris, right?
Yeah.
And she's as awed by Notre Dame and the beauty there. And I think you say in the book about this, lack of boundaries about what's beautiful.
Yeah, the chimps had got into a war, and she lost. They were like her friends at this point. She always didn't have much in the way of. She liked not having boundaries between herself and the rest of nature. The chimp, and that helped her realize that. Was open to chimps are like us. They have emotions and personalities. It helped her. She talked to trees. She was very childlike, and say hello tree, hello peak to the mountain when she walked up. But anyway, she was filled with the music. It was some Bach piece that came in. She'd lost all her. How could this happen? It challenged her belief in God. She was religious. Often I keep battling with her faith, and that challenged her faith when the chimps got into war, and some died. And then when she went to the cathedral and it was filled with music, she thought there's got to be something higher going on. This can't just occur by chance, as though this being filled up with the music in that beautiful cathedral somehow that helped pull her together. And later, when she lost her second husband, she was even worse, feeling even worse. And there she had an experience where she felt all at one with nature around her, and a kind of an ecstatic experience, and that reaffirmed her faith and enabled her to go on. Then she started advocating to save chimps. She dropped the research, started advocating to protect chimpanzees, and started touring the world.
It's interesting that in that moment she's more like Carson, right? Carson is interesting to me because while she has so much wonder, she seems more of a protector of wonder than a wanderer.
Yeah.
And I think and maybe that's what Goodall comes to.
Yeah. Carson is the most difficult to get a handle on for me.
Oh, no kidding. Yeah, that's interesting.
It's difficult because of the complexity. She could write beautifully, right like the devil, and had these emotions. And but like you say, she was a protector, and she was so good with science. Just really hard-headed at the same time. She was it's very amazing. She was trying to protect nature and trying to protect the world. And she also went through some hard times. She kept taking care of her family. She couldn't had trouble pursuing her career because she kept taking care of her adopting kids. Her sister died, and adopting her nephew.
Yeah.
Dropping out of her PhD program to help the family go on. And somehow she made her way, and then wrote Silent Spring, which started the environmental movement in the 1970s, about the dangers of the poison, the pesticides and the herbicides. She so was a very important person.
Yes.
And she wanted to write, she wrote one small essay called How to Help Your Child Wonder. And the solution was to wonder yourself with the child as you go along with the child out in nature. And her big ambition was to turn that essay into a book. And she got breast cancer and died before she could do it. So all we have is this essay. How to help your child wonder. They made it into a big book. You can buy a big book for more money with beautiful pictures, and it's a nice book. I recommend it. It's a very good essay. How to help your child wonder. And I summarize it some in the.
Okay. So I think we've talked a little bit about each of the six,
Mhm.
and so I guess. I like in the book you talk, we have these wonderful portraits of these people, but then you don't just leave us there. You don't just say, figure it out for yourself now. You do some really great unpacking, I think, of what the childhood powers are. And I wonder if you could talk a little bit about the specific childhood powers, because I'm hoping that we can begin to think as a whole community about how we can continue to work to recapture these for ourselves and to protect them for our children.
Yeah, that's why I think it was not so. Yeah, it was not so easy to organize. But the powers. One, we've talked about wonder, which is maybe the most fundamental, and we've. For that, Thoreau appreciated the wonder. Thoreau, though, thought to get to that, you have to have fresh senses. You have to go out and just let your mind go and observe, get into that. It's pretty much nature. Mm-hmm. You can do it anywhere, a park or anywhere, and let your mind go and just let the impressions come over you, and then the miracle of nature will will come to you. Like you'll hear a bird singing and you hadn't paid so much attention before, and the beauty of the bird, or the beauty of the trees, or the breeze, and things, the miraculous nature will reveal itself. And so, but Thoreau was very big on getting back to child ability to see things innocently, freshly, with this fresh senses. So that's a power of childhood, in a sense of wonder. It's ironically, it's the ability not to know, but to appreciate that there's a mystery out there. He thought children were in touch with that. And he kept wanting to say, and before I lost my senses, I understood I appreciated nature. But as I grew up, I lost it. The second power that is play. The play, I've always thought, we've never really, you have a great example on there. The anecdote you've given about the magic land, or Yeah, and you saw how it leads to a lot of thinking about immigration, and leads to, it wasn't just fantasy. I mean, you've got real problems there in this land, and it gets the how intricate children's play can become is, I mean, that's the childhood power to play. It's very powerful. I mean, if our lives become stale, trying to get back and play with kids, it's a way of bringing back some creativity to our own lives. The third power is the sensitivity to the natural world. Children more naturally feel at one with nature. They're more fascinated by animals. Like walking with my kids, and they would, in the whole natural world, they would, when our daughter was 3, I'd walk along and she saw a worm. I had to stand by her, well, she was about half an hour while she watched the worm. To me, what's so exciting here, but it's just full of wonder. Or a puddle of water, walk along the park. A puddle of water, as he drops sticks in it and plays with it at 2 or 3. I'm saying, can we do something? But then I started to get into a little bit by, okay, I'm not going to fight. I can't fight this, so I'll try to join her in this. And it's kind of interesting. And they do Howard Thurman is the best example of feeling this, having experiences where he felt at one with all life in nature, where everything blended together. And others could all have those experiences of unity of life, all life experiences. The kids are more prone to have these kinds of experiences. They're called mystical experiences in the philosophy. William James, the philosopher, described them as under his big chapter was mysticism, and he recounted examples of these experiences, but he didn't really realize that they were in childhood more than the adults that he gathered examples from. This oneness with nature is very powerful for Howard Thurman. The idea, how can we overcome the divisions between people? Well, naturally we are all one. So there's something more, we have this in common, these parts, we're all part of life. And that gave him the incentive to keep trying to overcome divisions between the races and so forth. Those are three of the main powers.
I think those are the big ones. Yeah.
The big ones. The children have a great, I mean, there are others that are big, like the toddlers that you see who explore the world and fall down and don't care. Their boldness at a certain age, about 12, about 12 months to a year and a half, they develop a courage. There's no way of other way of
who would ever learn to walk if you didn't have learn to walk?
They walk and they fall and they get up and walk and gee, if I fall, I'm aching and wondering whether I got to go to the doctor. And,
I know. It is still good for a laugh for me.
Crying about my pain and wanting, nothing stops them at that age. They're like mountain climbers, or they can keep going. The greatest mountain climbers. The language, I didn't get into the language, but the capacity to grasp grammar is
phenomenal.
Amazing.
It's
in
phenomenal.
Child, that's a power in childhood that is pretty well understood now. I mean, it's not totally accepted because everybody debates everything in academia, but children have this power to grasp very complex syntax as if it were nothing. Let's see. I think those are some of the main ones in the book that I focus on, are the sense of curiosity and the sense of wonder and the sense of beauty.
Yes, Yes.
sense of beauty.
And yeah, and I think that they're all connected and
Yeah, they are. That's one thing I learned. I mentioned is the people who talked about the six who among those who talked about the sense of wonder a lot. They talked about curiosity in the same vein: curiosity, wonder, beauty, mystery, as if these were all aspects of some. And I tried to find a word for it, but it's very hard. I thought maybe enchantment. But they talked as if these were all related. The sense of beauty and mystery come together.
Yeah.
Something is so beautiful. Like today, I saw one of our horses at our farm prancing, and I thought, that's the most beautiful thing. How can they be so? You know, this the smooth. You know, how could that be? That what's the gracefulness and the beauty of their movement is, struck me as wonder.
You know, I think a word we haven't mentioned, but I think it's in all of, I think it's all over your book, really. And it's just like a sense of gratitude.
Uh-huh.
You know, like how lucky we are, how fortunate to see this. How, I mean, when you said that, you know, it was all over what you were saying. It was on your face. How lucky am I to see this beautiful creature? How,
Right.
yeah, how fortunate I am.
Yeah,
To serve this,
that's nice.
and I think, you know, they say you can't be depressed and grateful at the same. And so maybe
You know who agree with you are a lot of Native Americans.
wow, no
A
kidding.
lot of their land-based theology was to be so grateful for the beauty around us. That
Incredible.
the gratitude, just to be thankful for the.
You know, that actually makes me think of one last thing. I can't believe our time is running out. But I wanted to ask you about the stone. Yeah, the stone meditation, because
Yeah.
I think where did that come from?
That's a good question. As a child, I remember was interested in stones, and I remember picking them up and thinking, I was about 5 or 6, and I remember thinking that these are very ancient, and they must have those things about very ancient knowledge. I thought to myself, but the idea, even at the time, I didn't tell anybody because I thought it just didn't seem like anything anybody would talk about. But they just struck. I didn't know how nobody told me they're ancient, which they are. Some of them were there at the beginning of the earth. I mean, they're so ancient. So I've always thought that, and I experimented with classes. I'd bring in stones and ask them to pick one that appeals to them, and then talk about it. And it's so revealing. They'll start talking about themselves. They see themselves. I like this stone because it's shiny on the outside. Kind of look in there, you see it's rough. Well, that's how I am. I look like I'm all, self-possessed and I'm dressed well, but inside, I don't know. I'm still trying to figure things out inside. And or I like this because I wish I could. Some people. Anyway, it leads to all kinds of reflections, and they reveal themselves to each other. It's good in a group, but there is something magical about stones, and I wanted to say that it's a way of realizing the connection with nature. There's something. It's still kind of mysterious to me. It may be totally mysterious. Why does a stone reveal so much about ourselves? Just getting to know a stone, feeling a stone. There's something really powerful in there. It reminded me a little of Rachel Carson, the way she wrote about the ocean. It's something that reminds us about where we came from. Somehow we know that the ocean was our mother way back. Carson appreciated the ancient, appreciated the past. that kind of comes out. She really didn't want us to lose our sense of the past. So stones is actually, that chapter is one of the reasons that I stayed with the book. I'm glad you brought that up at the end, because the times I got discouraged by writing, because it's not an easy thing to learn all the physics to write Einstein and everything. But I did definitely want to get that in a book. I think I bet a lot of your teachers and kids feel an attraction.
Absolutely. Well,
This
I'm not
thing.
gonna, I don't want to give too much away, but we have Professional Development Monday and we're gonna do the stone meditation
Okay, good. Oh,
as a group.
that'd be interesting.
You know, when I read it, I thought I loved it immediately, honestly. And then I actually thought, I think it was Grace Kenny, our environmentalist, who used to just say to me, "You love what you notice." And so when you start to notice something really deeply, you are in relationship with it. And,
Yes, yeah,
and
that's true. Yeah, and the stone people start to love their stone,
yeah,
and they feel something like the stone, and they have some special relationship.
yeah.
And when I did this exercise, I said, "You want to put the stones back for the next class, or do you want to take it?" I want to take it. This is my stone now.
Right. Right.
I say students 2 or 3 years later, and they would come up. "I still got my stone, professor."
No kidding.
Yeah, I
Oh,
still have my
that's
stone. They they don't say, "I liked what you taught us, professor." They didn't say that. They say, "I still got my stone."
well, that's what that means, though.
Yeah, I guess so.
That's the same as taking your hand.
Ah.
They didn't take the nut. They took your hand.
Ah, that's
Oh,
nice.
Bill, we could go on and go on. I'm so grateful for your time tonight. I know everybody in the community is feeling really just encouraged.
Good.
And by what you've done here. So I'm excited. I look forward to coming to the farm, and I look forward
Please.
to inviting you and your wife. Please come and visit Slate School.
I'd
Have a
love to.
visit. I look forward to being able to invite many, many people to come and see Slate School as the world recovers and heals. I'm hopeful and by nature, and I'm hopeful now because I know that we all need to work together to make things better for the children in education, and for the teachers too.
Yeah.
So we're not asking people to abandon their own creativity in order to be on page 67 on Thursday. It just doesn't make any sense. So thank you so much, and have a wonderful night, and go back and see that horse tomorrow.
Okay.
Get a little bit more prancing.
Okay. Thank you.
To everyone. Positive rice to everyone out there. Be well, and see you soon at Slate School, I hope. Take care.